Wednesday on Mansfield today, and time for us to talk things medical with our usual resident doctor, Dr. Vicky Skitter. Hello, Doc. How are you?
Hi, Jeremy. Fine, and you?
Yeah, you see, you can do this thing. Vicky was always saying, it's terrible because I won't ever be able to be out of town on a Wednesday. Here we are, and you're out of town because we can bring you in and mix you in, Vicky.
Yes, it took me about 20 minutes to get this right.
You wanted to talk about obesity today in children. Is obesity a real problem in children and adolescents for that?
Yes, it's interesting. If you compare the statistics if you compare it from 2016 to 1975, which is long ago, the global prevalence of obesity in kids between 5 and 19 years is now 18%, where then in 1975 it was only 4%. So that's interesting. And the other thing is, in Africa, the number of children that's living with obesity under 5 years of age has increased by 24% since the year 2000. So that's scary. I think living with obesity presents challenges to these young kids. It impairs the development of a healthy self esteem. It causes isolation. It can cause depression. People say to them, eat less and move more, and it doesn't work. And that only exacerbates their feelings of blame and shame. And their low self esteem can actually worsen. So, if we can try and understand the causes of obesity, and the psychological barriers these people have to seek help, we can try and be more compassionate, and not judge them, and therefore assist them in becoming, growing into well-adjusted, confident young people. So it is a problem.
Doctor, what exactly is weight stigma or bias?
It refers to the negative weight related attitudes and beliefs and views and assumptions about people that's overweight. So the stigma is usually directed to overweight children by their family, by their peers, by their teachers, by their friends, healthcare workers, we're also to blame. And they often get bullied and teased and victimized, criticized, that can lead to social exclusion and adverse health outcomes. The perception that overweight people are lazy and sloppy and unhealthy, unhappy and lacking self discipline, that's not really their fault. Often it's not their fault that they're overweight. They're not responsible for their body weight. We must remember that childhood obesity is a multifactorial chronic disease. It results from an interplay between cognitive, emotional, environmental, genetic, and metabolic factors. So the heredity of obesity is estimated at about 40 to 70%. And we must remember, or try and think, that there's hundreds of genes involved in appetite signaling and metabolism, and overeating is often a symptom and not a cause for obesity.
What could be the consequences of stigmatizing obesity in children?
Look, there's always been this risk of unhealthy weight control behavior. So they do yo yo dieting, they do binge eating or emotional eating. This can result in eating disorders like anorexia, bulimia. They often avoid exercise and sports because they're too self conscious. There's an increased vulnerability for these little kids, for self harm and substance abuse. Also, mental health disorders like depression and anxiety, um, social anxiety specifically, and that can cause loneliness. So it's very bad for their mental health. And then a poor academic performance can happen because they disengage in class. Often they also delay or avoid seeking help, medical care, because they often do get stigmatized. Even the doctor says, well, just stop eating nonsense. That doesn't help. And they often also, due to this, it causes them to frequently change their healthcare providers, and they cause the inability to maintain their weight loss and even cause more weight gain. So that's what happens, I think.
Um, but I mean, there are a lot of you mentioned all these different factors that come into it. Even we in the media are a part of that.
Big time, yes. So we know that all children and us as well, they get exposed to the media from a very young age. And it often characterizes slim people as desirable and attractive and clever and popular and kind. And they often use the larger people and characterize them as aggressive or unpopular or evil or stupid or target of humor or ridicule. So that's the problem with the media. And then if you think about the fashion industry, if you think about how they, what they put on the covers of magazines or in the magazines, these models with these ridiculously long limbs and minute waists, or the oaks with the 8 packs. They don't even have 6 packs, they've got 8 packs. And people, and it's all, it's photoshopped. And people think, well, that's the way to go, and that's what we should aim for. So that really doesn't help. This also spills over to the school and also to home. So 40% of overweight kids actually reported being victimized by a parent, most often the mom, and then secondly the father, and then siblings. And they often say to cope with that, they eat even more. So that's bad. And then more than 80%, more than 80% actually said that they would like to cope. They'll eat even more, which is like really scary. 80%. Interesting that doctors were most frequently yeah, the cause of was told to be the most frequent cause of stigma related weight issues. Doctors. So that's a bit scary. So us doctors must behave.
But how do you get an adolescent to stick to a healthy diet?
That is tricky. I think the most important aspect of this is of sticking to a diet is education. We need to educate and know. They must know why they need to do certain things. That's why a dietitian can be very helpful to explain to them exactly why they're doing whatever. They are particularly susceptible to the fad diets and treatments, and they're bombarded on social media about what things can work and what they can do. And, lots of that's absolute nonsense. So they must understand why they're doing it. They must buy into this whole healthy eating program. So, as I said, the dietitian can help, but a very good tool is to actually teach them how to cook. If they can be involved in prepping their food, cooking their food, even gardening, uh, they can grow their own vegetables. That could be hugely helpful. But if they can learn to make their own food, that's I think a big plus. Um, it's very important not to have a weight centric target, because obviously these kids are still growing. So you can't expect them just to lose weight, not to pick up anything, because they're still going to be growing. You must rather focus on quality of life, measures like energy, mobility, sleep, vitality. That should be used, and not just a weight on the scale. And then it's important, please remember, like, you listen to this just as a family member, as a peer, as a friend, as a healthcare provider. Let's not judge, there's obviously it's not about just eating less and exercising more. It really isn't. It's an absolute multifactorial disease, and we must be compassionate, and we can help them this way.
Dr. Vicky Skitter, thank you very much for joining us today on Mansfield Today. If you enjoyed the show, then press the subscribe button, and we'll be back next Wednesday with more medical matters with Dr. Vicky Skitter. Until then, bye-bye.